Welcome to Skroop.
Welcome to the first episode of Skroobcast. The main discussion topic for this one is anime for beginners.
Danny,
What?
what is anime?
Well, anime is animation. And I don't need to say anything else because there's nothing else to it. Not at all.
Why is it so popular?
Well, it's popular because of filthy little weeaboos.
Oh shit. Straight up targeting.
We're targeting
Coming for your necks. You know who you are.
you know. But really though, anime is primarily Japanese animation, but lately that kind of terminology, kind of ascribing it to Japan, has become become muddled lately. But we're not really here to get into that. We're here to just talk about the general overview of what it is. And it's mainly just animation that's for entertainment that encompasses a wide array of things.
Usually it's adult.
Usually it's adult. A lot of it can be geared towards children, but much of it is for adults or tailored towards mainly, I think, actually adolescents.
Yes.
A lot of the time.
Nowadays, mostly. Like with especially with the new self-insert characters.
Yes.
That are all the rage now.
Yes, especially in Isekai, which is another world shows, which we'll probably get to that sort of genre as well soon. I mean, well, we can talk about genres now. I think that's important for people to find genres they like when they're just starting out rather than to latch on to specific shows. So starting with probably the biggest genre there is, it's shonen, which is roughly basically meaning for like boys and teenage boys and whatnot.
Lots of fighting.
Shows that you may have heard of, because most people have heard of them even if they're not fans, are shows like Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, My Hero. A lot of these things you'll hear about, those are all shonen shows, and what really sets them apart usually is their themes, which is a lot about camaraderie and friendship and self-improvement. And a lot of hard work typically tend to be those themes because they follow relatable narratives that are all about, like, fighting and getting better. Even the way the arc is described for mangakas, which are those people who create manga, we'll get into manga in 2 seconds, but the arc is very, very upwards. It's a constant uphill thing. If your story dips too much, you might lose interest, and that's basically because of where shonen originates. Now, most anime come from manga. They're adapted from manga, which are basically comics,
Japanese
or
comics.
Graphic novels.
We're trying to break it down as basic.
Yeah, as basic as
possible.
But so they come from manga, which comprises, it's usually one person, sometimes two people, rarely ever more than two people. One writer, one illustrator. A lot of it is done by one person, though, with one clear vision in mind. But it gets serialized, and this magazine called Weekly Shonen Jump is usually where most mangakas get their start, that write shonen. And that's, a weekly serial. So how do you keep readers interested with a certain story so that there's enough readers and ratings that they hear back from to keep it in circulation? Well, you have to write it so that each chapter, each week gets better and better, and the characters are improving, and you feel an actual investment there. And that's why shonen is the way it is.
It's basically key to shonen is your characters.
You have to go up and up.
Your characters'
constantly.
motivations, and the battles need to be battles are getting smarter.
They are
shonen. They're getting really smarter. No longer the dull fisticuffs. Like, it's still fisticuffs, but it has like layers to it.
It does.
It's not my favorite genre.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite genre is slice of life, because I'm a fool who longs for the high school days to be right.
Why don't you tell our audience about slice of life?
Slice of life is basically, it's when you're a youngin, and you're like, wow, I really miss the good old days of my youth. And then you see really cute anime girls, and you're like, oh, cool. What are they up to? and you see them go through your youth, and you're like, wow, I missed that. So you just go in an endless hole of watching slice of life anime, trying to re-encompass something that you've lost. And it's a slippery slope, my friend. But I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good way to advertise for that.
Slice of life is usually each episode is like a one shot. It'll be something about chocolate eclairs one episode,
Yep.
and about empanadas the next.
Yep.
I don't know why I'm specifically talking about food. It could be literally anything.
I don't know why, but
it could be from asking your crush on a date or telling your best friend to fuck off.
Yeah, it can be anything.
It's basically anything. It's a sitcom.
That could happen in your real life. Essentially, yeah, most of the time. There are some slice of life shows that almost parody themselves to the point where they're really hilarious. Like Nichijou is probably my favorite one of those.
Nichijou is also my favorite.
Where it is like a lot of slice of life stuff happening, but at the same time, there's just so many over the top jokes and visual gags and things going on. And
mostly, you will realize that the humor is very Japanese.
Yes,
and sometimes that gets lost in translation.
For sure.
When animes are being dubbed, which what the fuck is dubbed anime?
Oh, right. Well, there are two ways to enjoy your anime, mainly. There's reading it and watching it. No, well, kind of, but subbed anime is when you have the Japanese voice actors and how the show was originally produced most of the time, and you are just basically reading the subtitles that someone edited onto it. Essentially, like a lot of other things that are any other foreign media will do the same thing for you. But there is also dubbed anime where they actually have a team of voice actors that dub over the entire show and try to lip sync it. And now, obviously, that sounds like an arduous process. So there are plenty of points throughout that process where it doesn't go so well. And you get things like ghost stories, which
Ghost Stories is a classic.
It is a classic,
for the wrong reasons.
For all the wrong reasons. So if you want a really good impression on what anime usually isn't, check out the Ghost Stories dub for sure. But yeah, there are plenty of other genres. There's shoujo, which is kind of the counterpart to shonen, which is for girls. So
this
things
is like Sailor Moon.
Yeah, magical girl anime tend to fall under this category the most. Sailor Moon. There are ones that put decent, darker spins on it, like Madoka Magica, which was...
I wouldn't count that.
It tends to be...
I know it does.
And especially at first, we can't really talk
Some of these genres blend in together.
Yes, they do. There's a lot of, genres... All they're there to do is serve as a point of classification. A lot of them overlap, and there's a lot of the same ones you'll find in any other medium, like supernatural, fighting. I'm just talking about the ones that are mainly specific to anime, like my personal favorite, seinen, which is usually geared towards a little bit older men, usually like teens that are almost adults, or, just around that age. But obviously, it's just a way of talking about a demographic. It doesn't mean it's the be-all, end-all. If you're outside this demographic, you won't like it, or if you're inside the demographic, you will. There's no, nothing you could do to actually achieve
just
that.
Because the demographic is for someone doesn't mean it isn't going to be for you. So,
exactly.
Try everything. That's my advice. Try everything. Even if it's like not your cup of tea, give it an episode, and if it doesn't catch your interest, it doesn't catch your interest.
Yeah, a lot of
don't let anyone tell you what to watch.
That, and also do not let anyone tell you about the 3-episode rule. There's a common misconception that goes around lately, and actually not even lately, for a couple years now at least, maybe even a decade at this point. But they say, give a show 3 episodes, and then if you don't like it, you can drop it. That's just a waste of time, because the whole point of a show, anything really, should be designed to hook you in the beginning. And if it doesn't, it probably will not by that 3rd episode, and you shouldn't bother. If you're on the fence and you're like, it's kind of interesting, but I don't know. Sure, see where it leads. But if you're like completely uninterested by the time the credits are rolling on the first episode, do not bother. Also, speaking of credits, I feel like we need to mention openings and endings because that's
very important.
Yes. You want to talk about that?
Openings. They're basically your theme songs. They will illustrate some, especially in shonen, they'll illustrate what the arc or the story arc will be. It'll show your main character. It'll have a song playing in the background. It'll be a montage of what to expect in the series. And endings is what openings are, but opposite. They come last. They show. It's
they
like
tend
a
to have
contrast.
They tend to have not really.
Contrast.
They don't tend to really have a lot of like impact or meaning in terms of the show's story. They're more like they're almost like stinger reels. They have a lot of like
they're to get you to sing the song and promote the anime.
They have a lot of like vector art animation and stuff going on in the endings usually, but it still nonetheless it's it's a pretty good system. But yeah, that's how they're broadcasted because they're broadcasted on Japanese TV a lot of the time, and that's just something you come to expect. Now, a lot of people will end up skipping them, and that's fine.
Yes, you'll end up liking it like maybe once or twice, and then you'll skip the whole thing.
Probably, yes. Some people get upset at you for doing that. I say that
don't let people bully you.
Do not let people bully you, no matter what. Also, number one thing I think, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's anime or games or anything, do not let a fan base stop you from enjoying something you enjoy or might enjoy.
Common misconception that will literally destroy you in anything.
Think about it this way, right? The show is created by, one to a couple people, and the people who latch onto that kind of show are going to be varied, and they're also going to vary in how vocal they are. But there are plenty of people that can enjoy something that won't fit into that because, again, it's created with love most of the time, and it's, well thought out, and there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of dynamic ways people can think about things and enjoy them, and it doesn't make a difference how big, how small, or how good or how bad a fan base is. And typically, the more people that like something, the odds are you're going to associate it with a bad fan base because guess who's more vocal? The bad fans. It's just how it is.
It's kind of like living in a society.
We live in a society?
We live in a society. Fandoms are little mini societies inside of each other. That's fucked up, I know.
We're too deep.
We're in too deep.
We're in too deep.
Anyways, where can we watch anime? Where can we start? Netflix is the easiest.
Netflix is the easiest.
Not the most efficient, but the easiest.
The easiest to get into if you have a little money, if you have a friend that has it, or anything.
Piggyback off your friend. That is the first lesson of being an anime
fan. Definitely
piggyback off your friends.
5 more friends to piggyback off of if you don't have enough already. That's what I'll say. But yeah, so Netflix has a couple to start with. They have Violet Evergarden, I know. They have
mainly like newer-ish series.
Sometimes, yeah. They have Naruto. Especially Part 1 Naruto, I think, is what they mainly have, and that's pretty good. I could recommend Part 1 Naruto.
Naruto is a nice introductory anime.
Yeah, I think so. That was one of my first anime besides the Pokemon anime from the really old one.
Back in the day
on VHS. I didn't even know what an anime was back when I was watching that, and then I found Naruto on Toonami. I came in on the Lee versus Kimimaro fight. It was my first introduction, and that hooked me.
Man, that late?
That late, yeah.
I was been since the beginning.
I was in third grade.
Was deep, dude.
I was in third grade.
Deep with Naruto. It was fucked up.
Yeah, but other platforms. There are 2 main anime dedicated programs or platforms.
Verve.
Well, Verve is
Verve.
No, it's a
Verve.
Verve, yes, we recommend Verve. But Verve is not just its own thing. It's an amalgamation of a bunch of other platforms that include anime and don't include anime.
A bunch of silly cartoon channels scrunched together for your juicy
Yeah,
goodness.
So you have Crunchyroll, which is one of the main anime distributors besides Funimation, Those are one of the two you're really looking at. Crunchyroll and Funimation both have a
stronghold. They have
they have a
their
very
foot
strong
on the
hold.
anime industry's neck for the West.
Yes, they definitely do, and they also are very aware of their direct competition with each other. So a lot of the series will not overlap. If you look for a series on Crunchyroll and you don't see it, odds are Funimation has it. If you look for a series on Funimation, they don't have it. Odds are Crunchyroll has it. So
Crunchyroll also does a thing called simulcast, which is when Japanese dubbing and American dubbing, or just any dubbing usually it's English, is streamed same day.
Yep, simultaneously. Simulcast.
Like, you'll get the Japanese stream 1 hour and the American stream the next.
Essentially,
yeah. You could watch an anime. This is for very specific anime. It's not for everything. But usually if an anime is popular enough, it gets an American dub. So if you don't feel like sitting through subtitles, don't worry. Your favorite will probably, something you're interested will probably be dubbed already.
And that's a lot of what you can do to figure out and watch things. Most of these subscription services cost around $10 usually. That's the rule of thumb. There is a way you can watch this stuff for free on these sites. I think mainly Crunchyroll offers, but the problem is the quality gets capped at, I believe, either
you gotta wait.
I think 480.
Yeah, it's capped at 480 quality, and you gotta wait like what, a week?
And an extra week. So say there's a show you want to watch, and the first episode, you're really excited, comes out, say tomorrow, and you can't watch it until the same time next week when episode 2 is out already, because they hold it back 1 week for premium users specifically. So, but if you do have premium, you don't have ads.
Bypass that.
Yeah,
you get excellent 1080p, sometimes even 4K quality.
Yeah, and they don't have ads, and everything is in a timely manner. I recommend that if you're going to go the Crunchyroll route. I recommend checking out what else they have on Verve and getting a subscription to that. They have things like Rooster Teeth, Cartoon Hangover, which is done by Frederator. They have Nerdist. They have a couple of other channels. They have Boomerang and Nick Splat, which are classic cartoons for both Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, which might also interest you. And they have a lot of stuff, so I recommend checking.
A big package with Verve.
Yeah, you are. So
you get more bang for your buck.
Definitely, it is a little pricier depending on how many things you actually subscribe to, but generally, it's like $1 per extra subscription, I believe, which is very, very minimal comparatively when you have to have these big subscriptions for these other things. Like Rooster Teeth, I know is like another $9 or $10 service. So having that's very, very nice. But yeah, those are mainly the places to watch. There's also ways to do it, but we don't
do that.
We don't. Yeah, don't do that.
Piracy here.
Yeah, don't condone piracy at all. But now. Oh, it's spring, almost summer, is it not?
Yes, I believe so. That means a new cycle of anime.
That's right. Seasonal anime.
Well, seasonal anime is basically, there are anime for each season. It'll be a 12-episode stint usually, with an original video animation that is sometime later down the year. OVAs are basically special episodes that are packaged in within the Blu-rays and DVDs.
And you can buy Blu-rays and DVDs.
Please do.
To support the studio and the industry as a whole.
Not just Blu-ray DVDs, but also merchandise such as plushies, action figures.
Make sure, though, that if you're going to buy things like figures and plushies, you buy them from reputable license sources that have direct deals with these companies, and you're not just funneling money to some... Don't buy from Etsy, number one.
You can buy it from Etsy, but that's not really supporting the industry.
Yeah, if you want to support, don't buy from Etsy. My personal 2 recommendations for figures are Figma and Good Smile Company. Good Smile Company tends to specialize more in Nendoroids, which are basically what's called chibi, which is like smaller, cute versions. When you think of like things over here, you might think of Funko Pop toys, but not hideously ugly and deformed with black.
Highly detailed with actual eyes.
Yes, with actual eyes. Big selling point right there. But that's
so cute.
Yes.
I have a Kirby one. It's great.
I had Vocaloid ones, but that's not anime.
I have Papaco.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. But yeah, so seasonal shows. It's split into 4 blocks. You have winter, spring, summer, and fall, like actual seasons, and they do correspond with seasons. A one core show is usually 12 to 13 episodes. That's what we call blocks of animation being broadcasted from one studio with one show every week for, usually 12 to 13 weeks. Enough time for it to be a season, usually. But that sometimes there are 2 core shows or shows that do more than that, depending on that, just the circumstance and how big the property is, and there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it. But you can find on, my recommendation is, if you want to look into these things, there is a website called livechart.me that, livechart.me / whatever season it is. So say right now it's spring 2019, so you would put in after the slash spring -2019 /TV, and you would get your listings for all the spring anime that's currently airing. And now most shows you'll watch that aren't even seasonal were at one point in a season. So seasonal anime is a term you can label certain shows until they go off season, then you can't really do that anymore. But there are a lot of returning shows and, things to get into. Many shows don't get second seasons.
Be aware of that. You'll get your heart broken.
Yes. So be prepared if you want to watch a lot of these one-core shows that don't exactly end in any way that suggests finality, because keep in mind, a lot of stuff was adapted from either light novel or manga source material.
Light novels are fairly popular.
They are.
Like, extremely. Almost frightening how many are getting adapted.
Yeah, and there's just more studios popping up now. And, but again, it's a lot about the, where was I? Lost my place. That is very unfortunate.
I will take over.
Yes.
Seasonal anime. Yeah, varies. Sometimes it varies in a lot of the genres. Sometimes you'll get your slice of life, which I personally recommend. If you're a beginner anime fan, I'm just plugging in all my slice of life today.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll get your action. You get your isekai.
Isekai, which is in another world, which is a really popular kind of almost like explosive genre that got popularized by a light novel adaptation of Sword Art Online, which I don't really recommend in like any way. But again, you're free to peruse and do whatever you wish. But again, yeah, that's a big one that started a whole chain, and then they're getting actually to the point where they have these really ridiculous premises. I saw a light novel that might get adapted into a show that's like my life in another world in a pizza place or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it's he goes to another world, like a fantasy world, and it's a pizzeria. He's working in a pizzeria.
Fucking great.
It does, doesn't it? Sounds
like a slice of life anime.
It is.
I'm in.
It's a slice of pizza.
That's how easily you can get into an anime. Does it sound interesting to you?
Yeah.
You watch
check it out.
You have nothing to lose but your time.
And your time is not valuable. You're watching us.
My face.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't mean that. I don't.
Please listen to her.
Please. I'm sorry.
Please clap.
Please clap. Anyway. So yeah. Going through seasonal, yeah, if you get you might get your heart broken if you go for these one core shows. So be prepared to commit. Now I remembered. Be prepared to commit to reading manga,
Or light novels.
Or light novels for certain things if you like, what happened, but you want to see more, it doesn't end conclusively, because it will happen to you a lot. Even with 2 core shows, which tend to be between 24 and 26 episodes, a lot of those won't even be able to cover everything, because most episodes, by rule of thumb, cover around 3 to 8 chapters of a manga. So when you think about it, it gets up there. So you see these shows that have, mainly shonen shows that have over 300 episodes or something crazy. You want to talk about what that's called? The F word.
Filler.
Yeah.
An anime binger's worst fear.
But why does filler exist?
Well, filler exists because the studio has to get up to a certain point of the manga, and if they're already caught up where the manga is, they have to do something which is called filler, which is fill in the time gaps until the manga can get caught up so they can adapt it.
Essentially, yes. The production pipeline for a manga takes longer than the anime because it's usually way less people working on the manga, and they have set serialization dates that usually it's either a monthly serial or it could even be less time. But you'll almost never see weekly or bi-weekly manga updates. Very rare for that. So whereas a show can get through all this stuff and has to get through all this stuff in a traditional broadcasting schedule of an episode a week, it goes a lot faster. There's a lot more manpower and a lot more, I'm not gonna say there's a lot more work and effort, because those people that put in stuff to manga can be insane sometimes, but there is a lot that goes into the whole thing, and so anime will inevitably, if it goes on uninterrupted for long enough, will inevitably catch up. And once that happens, then they kind of bring in their own in-house people to make up characters and storylines that don't really change too much, any major things about the characters or the plot. And so it becomes rough. But there are plenty of guides if you're looking to get into a long show that already exists and is pretty much almost done with its run, or in this case One Piece, which will never be finished ever.
There are guides out there.
There are guides for you.
You can go to the Wikipedia of One Piece. I know for a fact because this is what I did one summer when I wanted to catch up with the series. The Wikipedia for One Piece will label which arcs are fillers, so you can easily avoid them. Which I highly recommend if you really want to binge an anime and you just don't want to see what happens next, but don't want to sit there and see a plot that doesn't really advance the main plot. And where you can get light novels and manga is your local bookstore. Ask them to order it for you if they don't have a section already.
Mm-hmm. Also, a site I like to use if you want to read online is Mangadex. And Mangadex, that's manga and then DEX and no space.
We'll put a link in the description.
We will put a link in the description. Has a lot of colored scans for things. There are also teams, I should mention, that do...
dedicated teams of fans.
Yep.
Fans of teams.
that draw colored scans of manga, because most manga are in black and white. Fine. They're monochromatic. Yeah, that's a major thing, and shout out to the people who do that.
Thank you for your tireless dedication.
Mm-hmm. And also shout out to us for our tireless dedication to watching things, because now we're moving on to the recommendations section.
I've got a shit ton.
We do. Would you like to go first?
I want to recommend Panty and Stocking, just to ease your way from American shows to the Japanese humor.
Mm-hmm.
It's very raunchy. It's extremely raunchy. It's old school Family Guy type raunchy, except with a Japanese twist on it. It's about these two angels who are sent down from heaven because they were being very naughty. And basically they have to kill a bunch of demon and ghost ass to buy their way back to heaven. And they're just very funny, and just scenarios they get themselves into is just very comical.
And what studio is that done by?
Trigger.
Yes.
One of our favorites.
You will hear this studio a lot. It's attached to a lot of properties. It's Trigger Studio. And for my recommendation from them has to be one of my favorite anime of all time, Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann.
Or just for the American audience, Gurren Lagann.
Or Gurren Lagann, but yeah, TTGL. It is just an amazing show. It's kind of mecha, but I wouldn't really classify it as mecha. If you want to get into mecha, which is like giant robot fighting and stuff, there are older shows primarily that was really popular in the 70s and 80s that are really dedicated towards that. It kind of uses manga as a backdrop to tell a really good story though. It's super inspirational and like self-improvement focused, but it tells such a good story, and it gets the story beats and like the climaxes, and it gets so much right. It's just such a good anime. My personal favorites.
It'll be easily one of your personal favorites too. It's also one of my favorites. Another recommendation I would say is Boku no Hero Academia. My Hero Academia. I highly recommend this series to start out with because it's one of the easier animes to digest and get into because it's also a series that's inspired by American comic books and the American audience in general. So you just want to like ease your way into like the Japanese culture by getting some stuff that you kind of know. It's basically just a Japanese take on modern American superheroes and kind of flips it on its head
Just a
and
little.
kind of does a little cool, unique stuff with it.
Yeah,
It's about a hero academy of
Quirks.
heroes. Their powers are called quirks, and everyone, well, not everyone, most people have quirks.
Most people, like
but
90% of the population,
90%.
are born.
But our main character, he does not.
He does not
Until
have a
one
quirk.
of the most famous heroes, All Might, gives him one.
Yes.
And then he goes to school on his very own adventure to become My Hero Academia.
To become My Hero Academia, to become and this isn't even a spoiler because he says at the beginning of every episode, to become the #1 pro hero. So moving on from that, my next recommendation is this show called Jormungand. That's Jormungand. It's like the world serpent in Norse mythology, but it's about an arms dealer that travels the world with 8 bodyguards and a child soldier, which sounds kind of interesting, probably to most people, but tonally, it can be very serious. It's pretty lighthearted at times. There's a really good dynamic with the child soldier in that he's traveling with this arms dealer, even though he hates weapons, and she talks to him about his hatred of weapons and how paradoxical it is, and how even if he wants to lash out against all the people that use weapons and that are responsible for his parents' death, it'll end up having him rely on what he hates the most. And it's a good dynamic, but it actually really does go someplace, and it's something that's near the end that's foreshadowed in every episode. But I can say that because you'll never ever get it, and that's one of the craziest things about it. But overall, the pacing and the narrative structure is very good. All the characters, the side characters that are bodyguards, they get explored, and they all have really fleshed out character designs and personalities. It's just a really good show. There's a lot of really good action in it. The dub is actually good. So I highly recommend that show. And I believe that's on Funimation. In fact, I think they uploaded the first 1 to 3 episodes on YouTube for people to watch.
Another recommendation of mine, old school 90s anime, Tenchi Muyo.
Oh,
it is dubbed as the first harem anime, which means there's a bunch of girls, they're nice and cute, and they're trying to go after the main character. Tenchi, he's down in his luck until a space pirate fucking crashes on Earth with a space priestess as her hostage. And comedy ensues in their day-to-day life as living on Earth with Tenchi, just a normal Japanese guy going to university. And I highly recommend it because it's near and dear to my heart. I watched it on Toonami back when it was airing, back in the day when I was like 5, 6 years old. And I really need to go back and rewatch it.
And what I'll recommend now is Attack on Titan. And it is a decently big one. There was a lot of hype surrounding it a couple years ago when it was first coming out, and then it died down a lot, so it's a lot better to watch for the culture surrounding it too. It'll take you on a ride. It has its ups and downs for sure. I think a lot of the first season was really good. The second season has its ups and downs, but the third season has been nonstop throughout. One of my favorite things I've watched in a very long time. The third season is extremely good. And if you can make the commitment to it, which by then the third season is around episode 40 something, if you have the time commitment, definitely go for it. Well, my final recommendation is Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, fuck, I was about to do that.
Brotherhood.
Yes. Yes.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Like, you can't really explain it because it covers so much. There's everything from loss, like basic generic loss of, like, a mother or, somebody else, all the way up to genocide and genocide forgiveness. It covers so many themes, and the world is so rich and detailed, and the fights and the powers are so unique because they're all based in alchemy, and it makes for these such amazing character dynamics and all these unique character designs that actually play into their personality based on their alchemical powers and everything. And it's such a unique concept. It's got some of the best openings and endings in anime history.
It's got my favorite opening.
And it goes on for about 60 episodes, so it's around the same time commitment currently as Attack on Titan, but it is well worth it, and it is a very complete story throughout that whole show. It is such a good classic thing that I could definitely recommend to anybody.
My final recommendation, well, I got two. Cowboy Bebop is my first. It is a very, very must watch.
Very must watch.
Any anime viewer. It's space cowboys in space.
Yes, but it doesn't have the whole cheesy spaghetti western aspect to it. The cowboy is actually a bounty hunter, and he's a suave motherfucker, but he hunts bounties and things, but it ends up, culminating in a main arc and a main narrative near the end that really is very subversive, is very good, and tell them they're gonna cry because...
Oh yes, be expected to cry when you watch any of these.
I have one thing to say about it. You're gonna carry that weight.
Shaking my head.
What is your final recommendation?
Space fucking Dandy. I love Space Dandy so much. It's made by the same creators as Cowboy Bebop, and it's a wild goddamn ride. Every episode is different. It tackles a new theme because it usually has a different director for each episode, and they just come out with the richest, craziest sci-fi shit that you've ever seen. Space Dandy is a breath of fresh fucking air compared to like all the regurgitated garbage that's come along these years. And it's invigorating to see so much color and so much thought brought into like such a little episodic series. Usually it's a grand scale of like a giant war or whatever. No, Space Dandy is about having a good time, or about like loss one episode, or about the love of your life, or about high school one episode, or about catching a giant fish another episode. It's just a crazy fucking time. And like the final episode just wraps it all up in like a weird bow that makes you go, huh? But it's an anime that you can just watch again and again and again. And you don't have to binge it. You could just wait a little bit and watch each episode as they go. It's nothing like that's a big grand adventure, but it's a nice dandy time.
And I'll do one more because it's also by the creators of Cowboy Bebop. If we can't stress that enough, it definitely is a different approach from both Space Dandy and Cowboy Bebop, though. Although I am 99% sure it takes place in Cowboy Bebop's universe on Mars, just well before the time of Cowboy Bebop, because they use the same currency called Wulongs. But it's Carol and Tuesday, and it's about these two girls that meet in unlikely circumstances and basically rise to stardom as musicians in an era where AI is taking over everything, including music. So it's basically like the soul and passion and heart in creating something set to music, with the conflict mainly being against just things that are soulless and made from AI. The whole point of it is like AI can emulate any human emotion at this point. Is it really indistinguishable now? And that's what it argues. But it's all set to like this almost slice of life thing with these girls and the main cast, and it's a nice watch.
Beautiful
it brings
art.
You with hope and
very, very beautiful art.
Very good art. But yeah, it's such a very good watch. I think that's all to wrap up our first episode of Skroobcast.
That about does it. I'm Robotnik.
I am Skroob,
and we will see you next week
with another episode of Skroobcast.